Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Well-Being's Essential Conversation here today. I'm here with George, and we're going to talk about some really important material. George is a psychotherapist for almost 20 years now. He's been working with adults and children dealing with sexual abuse, and has spent a lot of his time in Haiti helping the young men and women with sexual abuse and atrocities that have happened over there. He's opened up a company called Word in Action, which really is dedicated to respecting, honoring, and protecting the families who have been damaged or hurt. Real sacred holding of the whole unit, not just the children, and the education of the environment and the society. Today we will talk about what George has learned along the way, what he feels is needed, so we can help protect the vulnerable and the exposed. George, thank you for coming in here today, man.
Thank you, Nigel. Thanks for having me, and I think we're gonna have a good time.
This is something I'm passionate about. Is really starting these conversations where people can slowly start to learn new ways to think about things that we don't want to think about. So George, I'd really love to, just like, what got you on the trajectory to be in a helping profession and the healing profession?
Honestly, I don't know. I think that the profession really called me because I was a pre-med major. I was taking my biology classes and all this stuff, and I transferred to my university, and I started to take some psychology class, and I fell in love with the field. And I talked to my academic advisors at the time, and then she said, "Well, George, you could sit," because I wanted to be a pediatrician. I wanted to work with kids. Said you could still work with kids or families and being a psychotherapist. I said, "Really?" And I switched my major, and I graduated, have my bachelor's, and then went on with my master's, and I've been working in the field ever since. And it really impacted me personally in my own personal life. Psychology really have been really helping me, but also it allows me to help other people. And you could see the change, you could see the dynamic, you could see the impact, and that is really worth everything.
Yeah, like when you do something and you get filled, like you get nourished and your heart comes alive when you can see the shifts, the small or the large shifts in someone's psyche and someone's style of relating, their behavior. It's quite something to be in a job like that sometimes doesn't feel like a job.
No, it is. It is not a job. It's just like, it's so rewarding. And you live in people after several years come up to you and say, "Well, so I do remember. Oh, thank you for helping me." I mean, that was the greatest joy ever. So yeah, I really enjoy it.
It's just it's like I love that. I love to hear that. And there was it's so important that we find what we're aligned with. I think what you're describing here is just like, this is possibly what you came here to do. And like when we find that passion, we find that calling, we find that alignment or that resonance, whatever you want to call it. What a beautiful thing to bring towards someone, because you're it's part of you. It's not something I don't think you can be a therapist and just do it because of the money. But you're in the wrong profession.
Yeah, it would be impossible. It would be very hard. Some people might try to attempt to do that, but they might attempt to do that, but I don't think they're going to succeed, because you would see it through. Because when you bring compassion and love into your field, your clients feel it. Even yourself, the feeling when you go home and you look at the face of your clients coming up the next week, and you see a child blooms out of your work. There is no word to describe that.
And just so you know, what he's saying, he's saying blooming. So this is what happens when you work with George. you start a flowering process. He tends to the soil, and then there's a blossoming that happens. So just for anybody who's noticing that they would like a flowering or a blossoming, or realize that they're a little bit wilted, then in the comments below we'll have all of George's contact details, and he works online and he works here in Bali as well. So just let's get with the meat and potatoes here a little bit. So tell me a little bit about as you started working in the clinical field, like what was it? What were the pivotal things that happened that then started to direct you into the, and you do everything, but we're going to talk about this sort of the accompaniment and the understanding of working with people with sexual abuse.
Mm.
So what was the pivotal again moments that shaped you to head in that direction?
Yeah. Honestly, I never thought that I would have got into the area,
Mhm.
the demographic of child sexual abuse, because I was working with all sorts of different disorders before, and I ended up working with an agency in Florida, and where they were dealing exclusively with child sexual abuse, and they were starting referring a lot of kids to me. They were sexually abused, and mostly the Creole speaking population, and there was one particular case, one case that really is going to change everything for me. And the young girl, she was 14 years old, and when they referred her to us, she already had a 2-year-old child, and we realized that, ouch. No, I think the child was 1 year, I think. And then when we start talking and then investigating, she was impregnated by her stepdad, and the stepdad was 70 years old.
Okay.
And then she came to my office. We start therapy, and after 3 months of coming, she never spoke. And I said, okay, I'm gonna use one of the things that I learned about, talking for babies in infant mental health. I said, you don't need to talk. I'm gonna talk today. And I start talking for her and asking her and having her understand that I got you, I understand you. This is not your fault. And then it started dripping. He started really crying. And then that was my breakthrough.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that there are more children that need help.
Yeah.
And that case particularly really, really got into me because the mother also was not supportive of her. She became victimized by the mother. And come to find out, mother married that man when she was very early, and she also was sexually abused without even realizing that she was sexually abused at 14. So it did generational. And I said, okay, now we need to have a cultural based approach, because the people in the system did not understand that young kid, because they wanted to take the kid away from her because she couldn't build rapport with that child. And I said, are you kidding me? This is a child being impregnated by a man that she used to call dad. And now every time she looks at that child, remind her of her trauma. And now you're punishing her for not being able to. I said, no, this is not right. You just didn't understand her. And I called a few of my colleagues. I sat down in my box and I wrote an entire outline, and I shared it. And ever since, I said, we need to come up with something.
Yeah, just again, like we're going to go into this in much more detail, but it's not just the child that's abused. Yeah. It's the whole environment is challenged, is compromised, and it's generational at times. And to know that, when you're working on this, when you can expand out and start to look, and you said, I love that approach where you said we need to do a sort of cultural sort of like framework, so you can take it all in. Like let's not look here, like decompartmentalize it, and let's open it up and take the blinkers off, and it's like, and then what impact it can happen when you look at it that way.
Oh, huge, because people are feeling more comfortable. They feel valued because you taking into account their belief system, their culture, because people approach sexuality and sexual abuse in a different way. I mean, they approach sexual abuse based on their own view of sexuality. Because sometimes they mix sexuality and sexual abuse. You see, and then the sexual abuse, and we're going to get into this, is not only the action or the physical action of it. There are so many ramifications. There are so many things that gets into it. So now when you convey that message, you have to speak that person's language. When I say language, I'm not talking about English or Spanish. I'm talking about understanding their perception.
Yeah. Wow.
When you come up to, you have to have that respect. There are certain words they're not comfortable with. There are certain approaches they're not comfortable with. There are certain imagery they're not comfortable with. So you have to take this into account. And when you value that, and they would lead you into how you talk to them about sexuality.
Wow.
They will tell you. And then once you learn this, you could use this to advantage and convey your message and protect the child. Because once they're comfortable talking about it, this is your breakthrough. Because sexuality, especially sexual abuse, has a lot to do with keeping it under the rug. Keep it as a secret. Nobody needs to know. because of whatever that get links to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we have to break that barrier.
Mm-hmm.
For that to happen, you have to have a cultural-based approach to
Yeah.
it.
Wow. And so when you went through that 3 month period, so what were you able to see that was changing that then give you filled your heart with sort of that energy to want to continue working in that
Oh
field?
gosh, it's everything because having a breakthrough. I mean, you're a therapist, you know that when you have a resistant client and
The whole environment's resistant.
everything's changed. And the thing here is, first off, I changed the whole scenery. I changed the entire setting because I felt that it was intimidating for me to sit in front of her because she was out on the other side of my desk, and then looking at her, and she would make eye contact, and not because she was lying or anything, because it's a cultural thing, because she was Haitian American, and in Haitian Americans culture, you don't stare at people in the eye. It's a sign of disrespect. Okay. Whereas in America, if you have to look at somebody in the eye,
it's the
this
opposite.
is the opposite. So I quickly understood that, and I changed my scene, I changed my props, and then I didn't look at her straight, and I start talking without looking at her, and in a very soft voice, and also validate her feelings. Have her understand that I'm not blaming you, because she spent her mom was blaming her, the system was blaming her, everybody's blaming her as if this is her fault.
And she's blaming her.
And she's blaming herself, because if everybody's saying that's my fault, this is my fault. For the first time, she's listening that, no, this is not you. This is not your fault. And I understand you. I see you. I feel you. I got you. And then she turned. I never forgot that moment. I'm having goosebumps. And then she was, and she turned. I said, her eyes filled with water, and said, "Can you help me?"
Yeah, wow.
And I said, "Yes, if you allow me to." That was my breakthrough, and I was running in the wall of my office screaming. Everybody's like, "What's wrong with you, George?" I said, "Then I make a breakthrough. I made a breakthrough." So that was the moment that says, "Okay, now something must be done to the in a lengthier way." And ever since, I've been dedicated a good portion of my life in fighting against child sexual abuse.
Yeah, wow. And just again, for the viewers watching, like we're going to unpack a lot more here, but just this simple but yet powerful thing of, if you're watching and you're struggling with a blurred possibility that you've had abuse in the past, or someone who's had abuse, or we're going to talk about the secrets, which are a lot when it comes to this sort of material. That the invitation may feel overwhelming, but whenever you can be validated, when you can have somebody see you, sit with you, and be almost the opposite of what's going on inside your own head, have somebody there being close with you but not too close, giving you the space to be yourself and to listen, deeply listen, and to validate, it's such a powerful thing. And so again, we're going to stop a few times throughout this talk today, just to really let people know that if you're struggling, or you're confused, or someone who's confused or struggling, it's important to reach out to a professional. You may reach out to a professional in your area, and if you are struggling and you need help or support, you can reach out to this domain, and you can reach out personally to George. You can reach out to the Well-Beings, where we have a directory of therapists to really help people. You don't have to do this by yourself.
Yeah.
And by doing it by yourself, you don't get anywhere. You get stuck. So so this is powerful. So how did you then start to work in a more bigger scale in Haiti with all the trouble that goes on there?
Yeah, after we started Word in Action, and we started working in Miami, in South Florida.
So Word in Action is an association that we mentioned in the introduction, which George set up to really have a powerful word to name. Then we have some imagery of it, and then to talk about the struggles, and then to have action to help people in need in Haiti. How long has that been running for now?
Oh, well, we incorporated in Miami in 2009,
Okay.
And then a year later, 2010, we were incorporated in Haiti, particularly after the earthquake, whereas a lot of children were sexually abused under the tent after the earthquake. A lot of them came to Miami, and it came to our attention, the level. But also, I always wanted to do that because, I'm Haitian. I go to Haiti all the time, and I know the history of child sexual abuse, how many young women and men also were sexually abused. And then we went back there and then we incorporated ourselves and we created a cell where, people could receive services. And we've been going to Haiti almost every year ever since, doing a lot of conferences, a lot of training, a lot of workshop. We've been on the radio. Actually, we were one of the pioneers, one of the first one. We really directly speak about child sexual abuse openly on the radio and television.
Wow.
We went to the Haitian Parliament and talk and address the issue at the parliamentarian level. We went to carnivals, and they were like carnivals. We went to carnivals. I'm talking about carnivals where a lot of sexual abuse occurred. We have 30 young men and women working the parades in 3 days in a row with T-shirts that stop child sexual abuse throughout the entire parade. And the country was just like, even the president had a stand, and we stood in front of the stand of the president and then making that move, that sign here, which means stop child sexual abuse. It was very powerful.
Wow.
It was very powerful.
And, in Haiti, and that the viewer know a little bit about the history that, child sexual abuse is everywhere in the world. But give us a little history why it's extra potent in an area like Haiti due to the generations of impoverishment and poverty in relation to the consciousness and the atrocities that happened to Haiti.
Well, absolutely. I mean, throughout the year, Haiti has been really victims of, the history of the country being a former slave colony, and then against independence, 1804, being freed ever since. There have been a lot of atrocity from other countries who are slaveholding nations. And that also consolidated within the impoverishment of the country, view the stand of that international body towards that new freed nations, where France also imposed a $12 billion indemnity to recognize Haiti. The United States did not recognize Haiti after 60-something years after Haiti gained its independence. So we couldn't trade. So the impoverishment of this country started there, coupled with a bunch of corruptions within the governmental level, so on and so forth. But why this is a little more potent is just because the institutions are so weak. Politically, there are a lot of instability. So now when you have weak institutions that cannot actually protect children, children are more at risk. I mean, I'm having a PhD in public health, and my dissertation is really linked to a lot of researches pertaining to child sexual abuse and human trafficking in Haiti. And there are a lot of numbers when it comes to it. And culturally also it's become a taboo because nobody wants to talk about it. You see? For me, it's very important to get that work done. And we've been on the ground doing it. And we're trying to educate people more and more about that. Now, after so many years working in Haiti, I've seen people are more coming forward. On the radio, they're talking about that. We try to get training for journalists. We get training for judges. We get trainings for lawyers, teachers, to empower them about how, because
they can see it. If they know it, they can start to see it.
They could say to see it, because the more you talk about it, the biggest secrets when it comes to child sexual abuse prevention is to talk about it. This is your biggest weapon. Don't keep it as a secret. Don't keep it under the rug. Don't be afraid or ashamed. This is not your fault, it's not the victim. Like I was telling you offline, if somebody comes to your house and steal your, let's say, your TV set, you are going to be okay to tell the police and everybody else, you know what? That's not my fault. Somebody came to my house and stole my belongings. But it's something like somebody comes to your house, come to your space, your personal space, and violated your body, steal your body. Particularly when it comes to a kid, you basically steal the innocence of that child. The child didn't ask for that. So why would you be another victim? You see? So why would you be afraid of saying that somebody stole what is the most precious for me?
Well, we understand why they do it. Again, it's education, but it's safety and it's
safety, education, the fear judgment, the stereotype links to it, and we need to break that. We need to be able to comfortably talk about that, because study shows that when kids are aware, when parents are aware, communities are aware, sexual abusers, sexual predators tend to stay away because they don't want people to know about that. They want it in secret. They want it in the darkness. So now, if they know a child is going to talk, they're not going to even try to touch that kid. Yeah. If they know the parents are going to be afraid of defending that kid and report this to the police and tell everybody that this guy did that to my kid, they're going to run away. They're not going to stay. This is proven.
I have another thing that I find that in my, and again, this is a subject that people may have an issue with, but in the past I've worked with pedophiles, and I've asked them, what do they look for? And it's obedience.
Obedience.
So if we rear children who are obedient, shut down, withdrawn, they're, again, we're part of it. There's an issue there.
Well, some of the parents, they may not know, and that's where you and I step in. To empower them to say, no, well, I understand you've been having that approach, but you know what? This is a better approach if you really want to protect your kid.
Yeah.
Have them not being afraid of expressing themselves. Teach them the real name of their body. Don't make a little nickname for their body. Let them know this is what it calls. And if somebody is touching you or approaching you in the wrong way that makes you uncomfortable, tell somebody. If you cannot tell me, keep on telling until somebody believes you and do something about it. This is how you teach your kid. So when the kids are comfortable, feeling empowered when it comes to it, now somebody's gonna touch you and say, no, don't touch me here. I'm not comfortable with it. They would say that. And that's gonna keep those sexual predators at bay because once the kid is not expressive, when the kid is shy, they prey on the weak.
Exactly.
They prey on the weak. And then you don't go ahead and ask your kid, okay, why were you there? Why were you wearing this? Why did you talk to him? Now you re-victimize the child. This is not the appropriate way. It's not the time, because now the kid is a victim. The bottom line, and research shows, most of the time, we're not saying that never, but most of the time the kids don't lie when it comes to child sexual abuse, because it takes a lot of responsibility to make that charge. And most of the time it's my words against yours. They know that.
Yeah.
They use that against your kid. If that kid does not have the parent to step in to protect that child, you destroy that child. So that's why as parents, we need to be empowered. We need to learn. We need to educate ourselves. You don't have to wait until it happens before you start talking about it. Come to Nigel. Come to me.
Exactly. Anybody who's watching it has kids, and I think this is, in certain countries they have like parenting classes, and they do things before the baby comes, and they sort of like very rudimentary sort of ideas of what it means to be a parent. To be a parent, to really rear a child, it's not by just giving them food and putting a roof over their head. There's so much more involved from your history, and so much more involved that you can learn how to be present with your children, and to grow and develop a healthy enough family unit. And in those instances, for people who want to learn how to be a good enough parent, and to be vigilant, and to be engaged, and to look at what gets in the way of that, again, we'll have information here of workshops, groups, and or working with an individual therapist to help you find your way through. It's okay not to know. It's okay not to know. It's okay to hide in a family and not know, but it's an atrocity if you don't get found. And by coming into groups or workshops or settings where we learn to know, we get found, we see all of us are trying to find a way. We're all imperfect, but at least if we can learn not to have to stay kind of contracted and compensative in certain ways to hide that we don't know, it doesn't help. So just again, to anybody watching, if you're interested and want to learn more, to be curious, to want to look at how you're parenting, again, George is a specialist in this field. I'm working in this field as well, and again, we'll have all the contact information in the links below. But man, this is powerful. And another thing that jumps out to me is what would be the steps that you would, what would be what you've learned? What are the key steps towards, whether it's prevention, intervention, aftercare? What are those steps that we need to start talking about to educate people about what sexual abuse is? How does it happen? What to look out for? What way would you go about explaining that?
Well, for us professionals is to be aware of the signs and to be comfortable about addressing them and how to approach that. Because sometimes the kids may not be comfortable at the first time to reveal certain things, but you make yourself available. You point it out and say, well, I see something, maybe something is wrong, but know that I'm here for you. And you could talk to me at any time. They're going to test that. They're going to test that water because they're afraid. They don't know what you're going to say. They don't know how the parent's going to be reacting. They don't know how the community is going to be reacting, especially in certain culture where sex is very taboo and nobody wants to talk about that. If you have a very male dominant society, it's very, very, very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So as clinicians or as professionals, you have to be aware of those stuff too, not to put your kid in danger, not to put your clients in danger. There are ways to go about that. As far as the parents are concerned, I'm going to go with the kids afterwards. The parents are concerned, but you learn about that depending on what environment that you're in. In the US, I could tell you straight up, report it, because you have structure for that to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In other culture, it might be a little more difficult. You see, and you have to understand the dynamic. But at least seek for help from a family member, from a friend that you trust, from a counselor, from a healing person, from people like me and Nigel who would understand the sanctity, when I put it that way, of your privacy.
Yes.
Okay, which is very important. It could help accompany you through that process. Don't go through this alone. You don't need to go through this alone. This is not something you could deal with alone. It is that I know what I'm talking about, not only from my experience, but I know people that are close to me, friends or family, who went through that thing and they could not disclose this. And that could destroy you or your kids. And for the kids, if there is a child listening, tell. Don't you ever keep this a secret. Even if they don't believe you. Keep on telling until somebody believes you. Somebody's going to. Somebody's going to. This is your biggest weapon. This is your biggest shelter. This is your biggest shield when it comes to child sexual abuse prevention. Tell.
Yeah, you exist, and your voice is so welcome, and even if it's being not welcomed by some people, keep trying. Keep trying, because
until somebody believes you, because somebody's going to. I guarantee it. And when that happens, this is when you start your healing process. For real, because you're gonna get all the support you're supposed to be having. Okay, they're gonna accompany you through that process, and then step by step, you're gonna transition from becoming a victim but to a survivor. You're gonna get your right. You're gonna earn who you are, because you said you cannot be broken by somebody else's deed. Okay, this is not for you to feel bad. This is for the person who actually did that to you to feel bad. So we will help you through that process. We'll help you to recuperate, to regain what you've lost, or to regain yourself. Sometimes you could get lost because it's very painful. Sometimes there's the guilt and shame about that. There are some body memories when somebody's touching you a certain way, and then your body reacts to it, and you feel guilty because your body reacts to it. And this is nothing wrong with your body reacting to it. Because your body is telling you one thing and your mind and your heart is telling you something. This is where Nigel step in, this is where I step in to help you through that process, understanding what's going on with you. And then we help you with the healing process.
Yeah, man. This is rich. I hope you can feel the passion here. It's like we're in the ring here. It's not a small thing. It's a necessity that we address this. And I think this is one of the reasons why we birthed well-beings, is to really talk about things that people are not talking about, to start to build a bridge where the bridges have been broken for generations, where we can normalize that everyone needs help here. And so we're having a guest who's coming on, I think, in 2 weeks, and it's really, really powerful. And her story of being trafficked for 15 years from childhood, from birth, trafficked.
Wow, that's huge. That's
and just and her courage. She wrote a book and she's coming out about it. It's going to be very interesting. I hope you tune in to see this. That again, she outlines the struggle throughout all of it, and and in Haiti also there's a lot of trafficking. That what was your experience of that dynamic, which is a whole other sort of division of sexual abuse?
Yeah, because as you said, it's another division, because child sexual trafficking is also part of sexual abuse, and both back in the U.S., because our organization, White Nation, we work both in the U.S. and in Haiti, and I would say across the world, because we even intervene in Dominican Republic and so on and so forth. But if your question is particularly to Haiti, there are quite a bit of trafficking that are reported, particularly between the border of Dominican Republic and Haiti. It's very pervasive in Dominican Republic as well, and some of the Caribbean nations as well. So where they transport kids from Haiti and go to the Dominican Republic with it because they could get away with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are quite a bit of those cases, and we work with some of them.
Yeah.
We actually we have activists really working on bringing some of these predators to justice. We have one particular case where that man covered under the umbrella of humanitarian work, and then went to Haiti and sexually abused hundreds of kids. And actually, there was one particular case in Haiti where there are 24 young men that I evaluated who were sexually abused by a guy. He was not a priest, but he was a Jesuit trained. And then I evaluated those kids. But I mean, thank God. I mean, we're activists and we're stepping up. And now he's in jail, purging a 20-year sentence in the United States. But the story of those young men that I've worked with and into this point, actually, I'm writing a book about this called "Betrayed by a Rescuer." And hopefully, maybe by the end of this year, the book would come out. I would love for you to read this because the story also, and this is the most intense work that I've ever done in my entire career as a psychotherapist, having 24 young men. For the first time, having therapy, having session, in my mother's tongue, in my language, Creole. And those guys were coming from the area where I was born. So you could imagine the consciousness there. It was very powerful. And I saw five per day, and I did have the
goosebumps all over me right now. Hair standing on my body just to feel the sacredness.
Oh gosh, it was really intense, and I work with them. I do evaluate them. After 10 years, they were sexually abused. 10 years from childhood until they become adulthood, and telling their stories. It was incredible. The last day, I have to admit, I was broken. I was like in tears. I was just like, wow. So, but
therapists are human too.
We are human too, so don't think that we don't feel here. We do.
We're not these magical others. We have hearts, and we get deeply impacted by this work.
We do. We do. Sometimes we have to debrief among ourselves because they come to us and then it's dumb, but we absorb that. We absorb their energy.
It's part of the job.
It's part of the job.
If you don't become a therapist, if you don't want to be troubled by your clients, and there's a magic to that because then we get to know a little bit about what it must be like for them.
It does happen. It does happen. And the mistake that I made, I was not accompanied by another clinician or by myself, and I spent the entire week seeing 5 clients per day, and every single one of them were young male, and they were all broken by the experience. So, but the reason particularly I really wanted to write a book, not only because of what happened to this young men, which I think is very outrageous, but they couldn't get the help they need after they won the case. They won the case for $10 million, but there were no part of the case where there was service, psychological support for them. And although we fought the best we could as a therapist to include this in the process, to at least get some funding for them after the one, to receive the service they need, they still didn't get that, and that hurts me as a therapist.
Yeah, so what point is given, like $500,000 or whatever it is to a child who's deeply damaged in a society and a culture that then it doesn't equate,
it doesn't. It's just like you take a bunch of prostitutes and you pay them for sex, and you tell them go away. And how would you do that? How could you accept that? And that's what irks me, because even if they have the money, they could have spent on their own money. But these are young men they were street kids who never had money in their entire lives.
It'll add to the problem more than
and then you just dump it. And then what happened? A large number of them became broke. They really get away with that money, and then they get back, and hurt people, right? So what happened in the community, there are a lot of people, and I felt that it's something that never should happen. It shouldn't happen. I want to write the book so that kind of things should not happen anywhere in the world. It's not because it happened in Haiti. It doesn't matter. Kids are not supposed to go through those things. The community are not supposed to know those kind of atrocity. And if we get the word out, maybe something would be done about it.
Yeah, and another thing I want to address, and again, this is something I am passionate about as well, is that where we have the doors open to the victims of sexual abuse from of all different flavors of that, but also because I believe that everybody has a conscience, and I believe that everybody can be haunted and not completely numbed by what they've done in their life. So anybody again who's watching, who has been an abuser, who has abused,
Oh, there's
often,
somebody.
often was abused themselves. And again, when I hear you talk about those boys who were left into the world, it's hard to know because the program's mixed up here. It's like what's intimacy, what's closeness, and how that can be skewed. So again, this goes out to anybody who whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse or what, like you've been the perpetrator. Again, the shame that binds you. Again, that there's a space. You can work through it. You can get through the other side. You can relearn and you can grieve. And again, this space is very open for that. George, I'm sure you've worked with clients like that before in the past.
Oh, absolutely. Because a lot of times you're going to find out that some of them were sexually abused themselves, and some of them could have remorse. But pedophilia is really a clinical, it's a clinical disorder within the psychology, and there are treatment for pedophilia. And we have to understand that. But also there are pedophilia, but also there are sexual predators that are taking advantage of the weak system, whether it is a cultural system, whether it's socioeconomic system, it doesn't matter. It has a lot to do with power as well. Somebody who's just raped somebody, it's about power. As you mentioned earlier, obedience. Power.
I went in my journey of filling my toolkit of in my life. I've toured to many developing countries. And when I was in Sri Lanka, I came across it as well. I came across abuse happening to young boys. And then when I was at my time when I was a surfer, when I was surfing when I was in Morocco, I encountered on my journey the same thing as well. These were people who were taking advantage of the lower class, the poverty. They came in with a sort of a financial sort of band-aid to some of these, and it was so, and I could see the seduction of that, and it broke my heart. And at that stage, I wasn't as therapeutically minded. I just got a little bit angry and abrupt when I saw it taking place, and I know in some part of me still feels that was. Okay.
The human part.
I was like, I think it was, it really enraged me to see that played so openly, and that is another part in developing countries.
It does because, like, for example, a country like Haiti, people preyed on the weak because of financial, socioeconomic issues, and those boys, they were street kids. They were street kids who needed all type of help, and this guy came like a savior, like a savior to take them off the street and provide them with what they need. And then comes to find out, okay, before you get a pair of shoes, you need to sleep with me. If you want to stay in the program, you need to do this or that. You could imagine how distressful that is. And not only that, not having any supports, because nobody would believe you because you're poor from the streets. Whether the police and the environment, the people in the community would know about that. The hotel that he used to take his kids, the hotel's owner knew about that, but nobody would say anything. And he took an American, a guy from Connecticut, to actually broke that thing open, reach out to me and say, look, this is what's going on in your own country. Are you willing to work on that? I was like, what? Yeah, get me on. So those things happen, and of course in developing country, because even the really affluent countries, they're still having struggle with for example, I live in Orlando. Orlando is really the hub for sexual for human trafficking. Really, Miami is a hub for human trafficking. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. You see, so even you have the struggles even in developing countries, in affluent countries, not let alone with the developing countries or maybe underdeveloped countries. Of course, this is more prevalent.
What I really, let's look at this in another way. I want you to kind of walk the viewer through how when sexual abuse happens to an individual, how it affects the family, how it affects the society, how it affects the economy, how it even can affect the health. So, like, how does this thing impact? Because again, the viewer, most people don't know, and I think let's help them know a little bit more about that. Like, how does this ever increasing circles expand out to touch these different levels?
It's a very good question, because a lot of time people think that, okay, well, the person has been abused. This is your business, so you get abused, and that's the bottom line. But it takes more than that. Let's say that you have a secretary, or maybe somebody's working in the bank, and the person been sexually abused. For example, a lot of kids who are sexually abused, sometimes that could impact them educationally. In other way, that, okay, let's say that every night you have an uncle, and I have a case like that. That kid, every night, the uncle will come to her in her room and touch her. So what she does, she couldn't sleep the entire night. She's really awake, and then trying to be, vigilant about what's going on, and she cannot sleep. And when she gets to the school, she slept during class. And then teachers couldn't understand what's going on with her, because she couldn't tell anyone. They thought that she was lazy, she was doing other things. No, it's just because somebody is doing something at home. That's why it's good about, about educating the teachers about signs. Sometimes you see certain behaviors that are really unreal. You just have to really ascertain to say, okay, what's going on here, before you quickly put a judgment. And then come to find out, of course, she was an A student, and she began flunking all the classes. A student. So now let's say that kids never received therapy, went through life not being equipped, but find a way to have a GED, get into some college, and becoming a professional. Never receive some kind of treatment. Now projecting that anger and that trauma into society. Sometimes somebody's interacting with you in a way, and you don't know what's going on. And now here is that secretary, or maybe it was that bank person, lashing out at maybe a male, client due to her own issues. Not being able to form a relationship, because people sometimes, when they rape or being sexually abused, they may not be able to couple with their own spouse. They can be intimate sometimes if they don't receive anything. There are a lot of things that gets into it. I have one kid who would say, when that happened to me, I fought every single day in the school. And they think that, and he kept flunking, and they kick her out in the system. Nobody knows what's going on with her, but what really was going on with him was the fact that he was abused, and this is his way of dealing with it. I have a number of clients like that who went to this process, but that affects your society. That affects you. For example, you could find boys. I'll give you one clear case. I was in Haiti on a radio station having an interview. And then while I was having an interview, they opened the line, people start calling. And there's one particular person who calls, say, "Oh, Mr. George, I know about you. I know you and everything. Do you remember me? Remember so-and-so you are working with somewhere? Now he's part of that gang killing people." 2 of them became gang members. Because sometimes the way we suit ourselves, when they take power over from us, we find a way to gain that power.
Exactly. And sometimes it's not always the healthiest way.
It's not the healthiest way most of the time. They take weapons, they take gang, they become gangsters, they become drug dealers, for example, because this part here not only accepts me, but also now I'm having power. I'm gonna punish you for what you did, because you didn't do anything when I was hurt, when I was screaming, giving you all the signals. You said nothing. Now it's my time to pay. This is payback. So really, sometimes you think that doesn't affect you. It does affect you indirectly. So when a child being sexually abused, don't think it's just the problem of that child. It's the problem of that family. It's the problem of the entire community.
Yeah. Wow. This is you brought up like I'm from Ireland, and over recent years there's been huge outrage in communication to identify a lot of abuse with priests throughout all over the world, Catholic priests, and when I was working in Dublin, and we had a clinic there, and I've had times where I've worked with some of the younger sort of gangsters in the area, and a lot of them had, well, their fathers would have been abused by priests, and then they were abusing their sons. And then that anger and rage was then being the father was not able to meet the child, and then the child was pulling in, and then also being violent towards the world around him. And it was they were carrying guns and knives, and this was back, wow, this would have been about 12 years ago.
Wow.
And to see that, and to see the chain, so to see this continual repetition, the thing is here, we got to stop the repetition. We got to allow intervention with a conversation, with sharing, with reaching out. That's how we stop it. We don't stop it by sort of pulling in and shutting down and doing it by yourself. Just let me I need to change something on the computer here. But if you could share a little bit, George, about what are you offering at the minute that people can avail of? And let me just move something.
Absolutely.
Click a button.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, and one of the things that we're really focusing on is the prevention aspect of it. We do a lot of training. We do a lot of workshop for parents. We do a lot of workshop for professionals. Those of us who are within the field of mental health. If you're a field of education, it doesn't matter what field that you're in. If you're a medical doctor, so if you, let's say you are a lawyer as well, because a lot of times, by the time the kids reach out to us, they're broken by the system. The question the lawyers are asking, the question the judges are asking, we do training for the judges too, because sometimes when you expert witness, you go to the court, and then you'll be surprised some of the judgment of the judge. You say, okay, well, Judge, what do you understand about that? You see? So, and a lot of judges, and I would say that in the United States, they're really open in learning, and they call onto us to educate them so they could make proper decisions.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's innovative. That's needed so much. So there's a, what other areas do you reach out to? So judges, or like solicitors, lawyers,
judges, police officers, journalists, people in the healthcare in general, parents. We go to the churches, the clergy, because it happens a lot in church.
Yeah.
So we reach out to the churches. I've done a lot of intervention in churches. I went on and talked to the flocks, and I talked to the pastors as well. So I would say, and a lot of parents and the kids as well. So because they need to be empowered, they need to know what to do, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. If my dad is touching me in a way that makes me feel uncomfortable, I should be able to say, Dad, I'm uncomfortable about that. So, and believe it or not, there are a lot of cases where dad is the perpetrator. Dad is the one hurting the child. And and you need to educate dad, you need to educate the mother, you need to educate the kids, what this is what appropriate, what is not appropriate. And I know that that's why I said we have a cultural approach, because it's different from culture to culture. And some I have parents here who tell me that, hey, I walk naked in my room and everything, and my kids. I said, okay, this is your culture, I have to respect that. But also you need to be aware of certain things. Because if you're aware, you could make an informed decisions whether you want to do this that way or that way. I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong. It's not wrong. It's your belief in your system. But this is what's going on out there. Okay, this is what we're exposing your kids to. This is what you see it that way in the family room, but when they go outside, the predator sees it that way. And they would seize that moment to prey on your kid. Be careful.
Yeah, and this is a good thing as well, because there's one thing about, understanding. Okay, there's the parents need to be educated, let's say, for example, of course, but then and there's also a culture that I have come across in the clinical space where mom and dad are aware that they have to be so careful with touching the kids, and there's a way in which, and that's just one of many ways where they're so nervous about how to do it properly. So it can go the other way as well. So.
Exactly, and you don't want to scare of people based on that, because I'm from a Latin American culture in the Caribbean. We touch, we hug. Hey, doesn't mean it's inappropriate. I'm not going to tell somebody never to hug your kids or no. I mean,
touch is important.
Touch is important, and it absolutely. But what you do is to equip your kid about appropriate and inappropriate touch, because they could touch your kid in a way, and the kids are very intuitive. They know. When you touch them, you could just hold their hands. If you touch them in a way that they make them feel uncomfortable, they cannot feel that.
Yeah.
And then you have to equip your kid. Say, well, if somebody, doesn't matter who, maybe touching you or approaching you in a certain way that makes you uncomfortable, it's okay to tell. It's okay to tell that person, no, don't touch me that way. I'm not comfortable with that.
That doesn't feel good.
That doesn't feel good. And it's okay. If the person persists, then you could go ahead and tell an adult that could step in and help you out. So these are all the things that you would say. For example, I have my boy, and it's from a very early age. I told him, look, if I'm here, you could hug and do whatever, because I'm here, my eyes are here. But if I'm not here, shake people's hands. That's me. That doesn't mean that it has to be like that for everyone. Everybody has their own thing. Because I found a way that, okay, this is a way to protect my boy, because When I'm not here, you don't know who's who, you know, who's doing what, you know, shake their hands. And if they feel that, oh, what's going on? I say, well, my dad just told me. And I'm here to step in to say, yeah, I told them when I'm not here, do that. And it's okay. You know, so I don't take away that the human factor of hugging and kissing. It's okay. I mean, we do that. I still do that. You see, but also when I'm raising my kid, I equip them. I tell them, you know, this is why this is why that, this is what you watch out, this is what you watch out for. You know, this is how people would come out. This is what part of your body that's okay to touch. There are some part of the body that is private that people are not supposed to touch unless you're a doctor. And if you're a doctor, you have to have permission.
Yes.
All those beautiful things.
This is just, you know, like so rich. Like, just imagine a world where all the parents did that with their kids.
Oh, that'd be amazing, right?
Like, if we equipped all the parents in the world with what they needed to do to tell the kids and the education of really being able to have those conversations, and or at least talking about how or what it is that makes it difficult to have those conversations.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard for parents to have that conversation, especially when anything related to sex. Because I was having a workshop last week, and I told my attendees, well, I never have a sex education because my parents never sat with me and tell me anything about sexuality. My mom never did, my dad never did, because my granddaddy and my grandma never did that to them as well. But I have to break that cycle. I have to go ahead and educate myself so I could educate my kid. You know, I have to learn different things. I have to talk to my colleagues. I have to talk to other people who know I have to talk to other parents who went through it. You know, you cannot, it takes a village. When they say it really takes a village, because you rely on people's experience. You rely on professionals. We equip ourselves. The world is changing. They have technology right now. Your kids are exposing to more things, to many things that you've never imagined. They've become masters of things that you would never thought at their age you would even think about. You see, that little gadget that you give them is so powerful, you know? So you have to be equipped.
Yeah,
it's a new world.
It's about educating all the ways about how they can get touched online and in person. That's inappropriate. You know, I think it's
amazing. Cyber sexuality is really huge. Cyber predators are really huge. I have presentations on that as well, and how to protect that, and what to do, because they're all outside. They're all out there, and they're exposing to that. There are a lot of sites. There are pornography. There are child pornography sites. There are predators that, you know, pose as a child. You think that your kid is talking to a kid. No, they're talking to a sexual predators, and they entrusted your kid. You know, your kid entrusted to them, and they took advantage. They are very naive, and they're looking for attention, especially if mom and dad are working full time. They don't have time for the television, and the cell phone is what babysitting for them. You'll be surprised what the kids has been exposed to. You'll be surprised how great they are by the time they get into school. All the other kids that are really known and very expert about the things, they're going to teach your kids about very serious stuff. So you have to be, I'm not saying that to get you paranoid. Please understand that. I want to empower you so you could be more aware to protect your kid. I don't want you to be scared, because as I said earlier, you're afraid of what you don't know. If you know, you have mastery of it. So I want you to know that, so you could feel empowered. You could feel better in your skin as a parent. You could go ahead and say, you know what, I could do this. Or, you know what, if I can do this, I have resources. I could call Wellbeings. I could call so-and-so. I could call George. I could get on that website, because those people are there for me. Nobody knows everything. We're still learning. Okay, and we rely on each other.
And it's like this, you know, it's not about making you. It's not about trying to be perfect as a parent, and it's like we all are imperfect. And if we can be good enough, and good enough means that we, in my opinion, a good enough parent is a parent who doesn't try to do it by themselves either. And it's just about reaching out, being humble enough to say, I don't know, or hey, you know what, I'm curious about this, or hey, I feel stuck with that, or hey, you know what, this enrages me, or this upsets me, or and it's this sort of thing that I want to build a bridge towards. So again, as we're coming to the end, and I just want to really kind of end with this one with you here, George. And it's like, we may have said it already, but, you know, like, what would be the message that you would send to someone who either feels they're being sexually abused, or have moments where their body freezes, or where they, in moments of intimacy, where there's just this sort of blur that maybe something happened, or where they are locked in shame, or contracted, or frozen, or like they hear that there's something that could have happened, but they're just so removed from it and think that it's better just to forget about it. What would you say to those people who have been hurt? What could you say to them?
First off, let me say, this is not your fault. This is the first thing I would tell you. This is not your fault. So don't go ahead and think that maybe I've done something. Why this is happening to me? Okay? Because you go outside, you have an accident, somebody hits you. You're not gonna say, you know what, I drove so recklessness, that's why that happened. Somebody comes to your house and then pull a gun and then steal everything. You're gonna report that to the police and say, you know what, this is what happened to me, you are a victim. Same thing about somebody violating your body, violating your space, violating your intimacy. You didn't ask for that, you didn't invite that. And even if I don't give you permission, who gives you the right to do that? It doesn't matter what I wear, it doesn't matter how I look.
Exactly.
It does not matter. You don't have that right. So this is not your fault. This is first thing. Now you know it's not your fault. Please do not go through this alone. There are people out there who understand, who could help you and accompany you through that process. Because this is not something, because the impact and the trauma related to child sexual abuse sometimes is long lasting. It's not something that overnight you're just going to go over it. You can put it in the back of your mind. It's just like you have a balloon filled with air and you press the balloon here, air goes there, air goes there. But until you pop up the balloon for the air to come out, you just misplace it. You just displace it to some other place. You're not curious. It doesn't, you see? So you have to pop the balloon. You have to get the energy out. And the best way to do that, go see a professional. Go see somebody you trust who could help you or equipped to help you go through that process. When you can do that, you would regain everything because you have it in you, but we could accompany you through that process.
Yeah, like I'm just so moved by by just the need of just that act of reaching out to another soul, another adult, another professional, to just keep this, to start the movement towards self, towards healing, towards engagement, towards living a fulfilled life instead of hanging out in the dull dungeon of an unfulfillment. So that's my prayer. And to the well-beings people watching, all the links will be below. If you know somebody who needs help, share this link. If you can like it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps get our message out. It's it would really help us a lot. But at the end of the day here, everybody, we're trying to bridge this place of ignorance towards communication to be able to have conversations that are important. And again, as you reflect on, whether you're watching this live or you're listening to it later on, what happens when you hear us talk? What comes alive in you? What feels deadened in you? What feels uncomfortable? Like, listen to your body. Listen to what it says. And again, we're here. We're going to be here every week. We're going to have George back on again. There's going to be much more stuff we're going to talk about in relation to this domain. We just gave like a rough overview today. But yeah, keep reaching out. Keep knowing that you don't have to be alone. And we'll be here next week again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, George.
Good job.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
That's a deep honor, man.